Yesterday was the monthly meeting of the Illinois Orchid Society, and here are all my orchids that went to the meeting, and they're still waiting to be put back on my shelves. So the Illinois Orchid Society started, I guess, earlier this year, maybe last year, something called Plant of the Month. And in Plant of the Month, oh, no, I'm sorry, not Plant of the Month, People's Choice. So Plant of the Month is picked by people who judge our monthly show table, but People's Choice, everyone in the society gets to vote. And I got People's Choice this month for my Fredclarkeara After Dark right here. And it's actually quite sad looking now because I basically, it was really windy last night when I was coming home, and I ended up dropping flowers for this all over. I think I lost probably 20, maybe 30 flowers on this. And so I'm going to share a photo of it from before it went to the meeting. But it's quite clear to me that everyone was really interested in how I grow my Fredclarkeara After Dark. And so I thought I would share how I grow it. So I'm going to share the culture for Fredclarkeara After Dark, and you can apply it to other catasetums in the Midwest. So this is how I grow it indoors, inside, not in a greenhouse. So Fredclarkeara After Dark is really, really large, and I'm holding my hand here to give proportion so you can see like how large one of the pseudobulbs actually is. And what I found out in the years that I've been growing it, I looked back in my database and I got my first catasetum from Sunset Valley Orchids in 2012, is that if you want it to bloom, then the pseudobulbs need to be really big and really fat. So how do you get the pseudobulbs really big and fat? Well, if you subscribe to the Sunset Valley Orchids newsletter, then I think twice a year, 3 times a year, Fred will send out a newsletter detailing how to grow catasetums. And in the one for, I think for summer, he'll tell you that they're very heavy feeders. So you have to feed them really, really heavily in the summer. Now, most people interpret that meaning that you have to give them fertilizer. And I don't fertilize. So how do I get mine to bloom nicely like this and grow gigantic pseudobulbs without fertilizing? And when I think of feeding my Fredclarkeara After Dark or any of my catasetums, I think about sunlight. So to me, catasetums are full sun orchids, and I do best with them when I put them in Cattleya level light, Vanda level light, and I keep them really, really hot. So they do really well for me because half of my collection is Cattleyas, and I grow very bright and very hot. In the summer, these sit in the area of my shade cloth that isn't, so everything sits underneath the 50% shade cloth, but these guys sit in the area of the shade cloth that has the most sunlight. So they're not blocked by the trees. Well, whatever trees that's left, as we all know, I'm losing that tree at the southern end of my yard. But I give them what passes for full sun. And in the winter, I try to give them the sunniest spot. So the ones that are not in bloom right now are sitting in this tray that is at the very front of my sunroom, and they're in full sun. The catasetums also like to be really warm. If they're in sun, of course, that keeps them really warm. They like to grow hot. That helps with the Cattleyas. They don't like to get too cold, but these guys are also sitting right next to my baseboard heaters, and that helps keep them warm. I don't put them right against the baseboard heater because then they'll just burn. The heat coming out is too hot, but they're as close as it can be. Even once they lose their leaves, I keep them here in the full sun in the winter. So they want that, so I'm feeding them with sunlight. I'm keeping them warm, and I'm keeping them really sunny. And then in the summer, I water them every day. So I'm maximizing their feeding by giving them lots of water, lots of sunlight, and the right temperature for them, which is being really warm. Then in the winter, when they're, so some like straight catasetums, they bloom usually earlier in the summer. The cycnoches bloom in the fall, and the Fredclarkearas, they're actually blooming a little early. We've had a very, very warm fall, but usually they start for me in about December, and they bloom about 2 months into February. And through the whole period when they're blooming for me, I usually still keep my leaves, and I will continue to water my catasetums that have their leaves, but I reduce my watering in the winter. So if you could look at these two blooming, these are actually both after dark. They're sitting in 100% moss, and they're in these little trays, well, you know, like plant saucers. And I will basically water this until water comes out to the bottom and it comes up to about half full of the saucer, and I will let them sit in the water. And I will water these as long as they remain in bloom. And since they bloom so long, these bigger ones that are blooming don't enter dormancy until about February, beginning of March. It might be earlier this year since they bloomed earlier. And then once they enter dormancy, I do stop watering them, but I try to keep my growing area 50% humidity or above, but then I will still water them once a month. So I do the same thing where I will add water to the sphagnum moss until it comes out in the dish and the saucer's about half full, and then I'll just let it absorb up. And I do that about once a month. So I know some people around here, because in the Midwest, when we have the heat on, it can get really, really dry, like 30% in the house. They will try to mist their moss every day. I've done that in the past, and that definitely helps keep them alive, and it helps keep the pseudobulbs from shrinking too much. But I do still get some pseudobulb shrinking. So you can see this is an older one, but that's how I grow them. And when I grow my catasetums, in order to try to get them to bloom, I know that I need to have a new growth, like you can see right here, that is bigger than the old growths. So this growth right here, that's 1 year. And this catasetum, actually this Fredclarkeara, the darker one right here, it actually put out 2 new growths this year. So it's really, really happy. And I don't take off my old growths. I leave them as stored energy to help the plant put out the new growths. So if I don't give them enough sunlight and I have a problem with my new catasetums that I've gotten from Fred, so I'll get a catasetum like this Clowezia Rebecca Northern from Fred, and it will be small, and I have a tendency to tuck these underneath my cattleyas to make it all fit in my growing space. But unfortunately, what happens then is the cattleyas will shade the catasetum, and then if I don't discover it soon enough, it will not have gotten enough energy and not enough food from the sun, right? It hasn't gotten enough sun energy, and then it hasn't made enough food for itself. And then the new growth, as you can see right here, is much smaller than the original growth. And I suspect that this Rebecca Northern is probably not going to make it for me because it got tucked underneath bigger plants and it didn't get enough sun this summer. I don't think it's going to make it. I'm just trying to eke it through the winter and see if it puts out a new growth next year. This is something, I think I got it this year or maybe late last year. But here's one that I got from Fred that didn't get lost underneath a bigger plant. And so here's the bulb that it came with. And then here is the bulb that it grew this year. And it's bigger. It's probably not blooming size yet, but it is bigger. And it's slowly getting ready to go dormant now. It's still green. I'm still watering this. I want to say that I do reduce water. I don't feed as heavily, but I do keep watering these. So this is now down to I'm watering it like once a week, right? And then if I don't let these go into dormancy, if they continue to do this, what will happen is the next year's growth will be smaller than this year's growth. So they have to go into dormancy. But unless I have a real problem with them, then it'll happen naturally. So sometimes it doesn't happen naturally. They don't lose their leaves. And when that happens, what I will do is I will hard withhold water. Like I won't water it for a month, 2 months. I will water it until it basically, I'll just withhold water until the leaves turn yellow and they fall off. And then that like forces the Catasetum into dormancy. But I only do that if it continues growing all through the winter, and then that results in these really small growths, like not like here, but if like the new growth next year was small like this and smaller than the existing growth that came out this year, and it kept growing through the winter, and that's when I would force dormancy. Otherwise, I don't force dormancy in these. The winter growing space for these is, I want to say maybe 80, 85 during the day when it's sunny like this. And then at night, it gets down to about 55 here. It's probably a little bit warmer right next to the heater, probably closer to 60. The thermostat in my grow space is set to 60 degrees. But I think farther away from the heating elements, it's probably only between 50, 55. Because my floors, which is tile right down here, is not insulated. And so the floor gets really, really cold. And these are all, even though they're sitting in a tray, they're basically right on the floor. So I actually find catasetums to be really easy. It did take me about 4 to 5 years to figure them out. The first catasetum that I got from Sunset Valley Orchids is a Fredclarkeara After Dark, which I have not bloomed yet because the first 4 years it never went into dormancy. And I had to actually write Fred and say, hey Fred, what do I need to do to get this to go into dormancy? And also each year the growths are smaller than the previous year. And he basically told me that I needed to force it into dormancy. After that, it took me almost 2 years to get it to start cycling normally. And you can see it here. I don't think it has bloomed yet. So here are old pseudobulbs on it. And then you can see as I've been growing it better, each year the pseudobulbs are getting bigger. And this is this year's pseudobulb right here. And I think it's finally big enough to bloom. I did buy a Fredclarkeara After Dark Sunset Valley Orchids, which is the spotted one. And that one, I got it to, I bought it blooming, and its pseudobulbs are about this big. But if you look at it, I don't see any nubs on this yet. So it's taken me a long time to get this to blooming size because it did not start off correctly for me. But it was like my learner plant. I had to learn how to grow to catasetums using this one. And so this, I'm hopeful, I guess, is a decade's worth of work here. And hopefully it will spike this year. But that's how I grow catasetums. I grow them full sun, and I should mention that even though they're under 50% shade cloth, they get between 8 and 10 hours of sunlight every day, and I grow them really hot. I try to keep them over 80 degrees whenever possible. Obviously it's a little hard in the winter here, but that's part of the reason they're going dormant. I don't let them get colder than 50 degrees, so they're one of the earliest plants to come in. And my biggest problem with them is that the slugs will often eat the emerging bloom spikes, and then I won't have any blooms. I've had several Fredclarkearas where I've seen them start to spike, and then the slugs have eaten my flower spikes. So I hope this helps people, and happy blooming.